Hey guys, and welcome back to our Java OpenGL 2D game development tutorial series. In this episode, I want to make it where we can rotate the rectangles that we've been drawing, because this is something that you're going to want to do with images whenever you're working on a game. And so what we're going to do, well, first off, before we do anything else, right here in the init method of our event listener class, where I said gl.gl clear color 1001, set that to 0001 because the red background is getting on my nerves. So I want it to be, it's just really bright on my screen and it bothers me. So we're going to set that for black, partly because it doesn't make any sense to have the background be red. I just did that to illustrate something in a previous video. So, in order to make it where we can rotate images, the problem is that we're going to have to be able, we don't want to rotate around. See, in graphics, we draw the X and Y position is the lower left-hand corner of the image, and then we have width and height, but we don't want to rotate around the lower left-hand corner of the image. More often than not, you're going to want to rotate around the center of the image. And so we're going to change the way that we are rendering things, and that's going to be that we're going to make it so that X is now the middle of the image, or in this case, the rectangle, and Y is in the middle, or the X and Y define the point that is the middle of the image, and then width and height are going to be the width and height, extending out sideways and both sides and up and down. It'll make sense when we get to it. All we have to do to change this is when we say X, Y, treating those as that position there, what we want to do is change X. Everywhere where we put X, we want it to be X minus width divided by 2. Okay? Now that's for X by itself, not where we have X plus width here. Instead, what we, just whenever it's X by itself. So that's there and down here, X minus width divided by 2. And then where we have Y by itself, which is on this top one right here, it would be Y minus height divided by 2. And here again, Y minus height divided by 2. As for the others, all we have to do is X plus, right now it's X plus width, right here. We want to change that to X plus width divided by 2. And then this one where it's X plus width, make it X plus width divided by 2. Same thing for Y dot height. Y plus height. Now it's Y plus height divided by 2. And Y plus height divided by 2. So you can see what we've done there. Our leftmost position is X minus width divided by 2, and our rightmost position is X plus width divided by 2. So X minus width and X plus width divided by 2. So to test this out, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our event listener, and we're going to draw our rectangle. Well, first off, let's get rid of one of the rectangles. We're going to draw our rectangle at 0, 0, 1, 1, just like we were doing before. When we draw it, it should appear dead center of the screen. And it does, because now our origin point is right here. So let's get to where we can rotate an image. The way we're going to do that is we're going to set, right here I'm going to make a comment, rotation in degrees. We're going to private static float rotation equals 0, because by default we don't want any rotation. And we're going to create a method to set that. Public static void set rotation, and we're going to give it a float and have it be let's just call it R, and we say rotation equals R. And so when we want to change the rotation of whatever we're about to draw, we just call set rotation, graphics.setRotation, and it will set the rotation. And now in order to actually rotate, what we need to do is we need to rotate around a particular point, and that's the X and Y position right here. So what we need to do is, before we actually draw anything, we're going to rotate by saying GL translate F, X, Y, and Z will be 0 because it doesn't matter. So GL translate F, X, Y, and 0. The reason why we're doing this is because we need to basically move our GL context to the position that is x by y. That way when we rotate, we're rotating around that point. And so we just say gl.gl rotate f. That we've got 4 values here. Only one of these, well, actually they're all important, but the reason why we have 4 values is we have the axis of rotation and we have the amount of rotation. And so what that means is we've got x, y, and z. X, as you know, is sideways this way. We do not want to rotate around the sideways axis because that will sort of tilt the rectangle towards or away from us. That is not what we want, so set that to 0. The next one is y, which as you know is up and down. Again, that's not the one we want. We want to rotate around the z-axis, which is the one that sort of points from the camera off into the distance. That's the axis around which we want to rotate. Imagine that axis as being like a stick sticking through our rectangle, and our rectangle can freely spin around that stick. And if that stick is pointing away from us, then we'll be able to see the thing rotate, kind of like the steering wheel on a car. If you imagine moving the steering wheel, that's the kind of rotation we want. So this third parameter becomes 1. The last parameter is the amount of rotation around that axis that we defined using these 3 variables. And that rotation is going to be rotation. And then we're going to say gl translate f negative x negative y 0. The reason why we did that is because we want to move our GL context back to the origin point after we've done the rotation, because we don't want to leave it at x and y, because then when we draw this down here, we'll be drawing it relative to the position of the GL context, which is at x and y. So when we say x, we're no longer getting the actual value of x, we're getting x relative to x. In other words, if x is 1, then we'll move over by 1, and then we'll move over by 1 again when we say x later, and we don't want that. So just remember, you need to do the negative of whatever you did here when you translated if you want to put it back. And so if we set rotation to, let's say, 45 for 45 degrees, and we run the code, we do not get the rotation we wanted. Why is that? Let me see what happens if I set this to 1. Rotation equals 1. What am I doing wrong here? I know it's probably something very simple that I'm forgetting. Okay, well, hang on. First off, when we're done doing what we're doing right here, actually, I think now that I'm looking at it, there's a better way to do what we're doing. Something that makes that demonstrates the way OpenGL works a bit better. And that's that we're going to get rid of let's move this negative translation to the end of the method after we've drawn everything. And we'll also take the rotation and put it back there also before we translate back, and we'll set it for negative rotation. So what we do here is we create we move the OpenGL context, we rotate the OpenGL context, we draw the stuff, then we rotate the OpenGL context back, and we move it back. And so what we can do is we can actually get rid of the x and the y in all of these. We can just say negative width divided by 2, and then right here where it's x plus, it just becomes width divided by 2, and x plus again, and then the x minus just becomes minus. So you see what we did there. And same thing over here. Y minus height becomes minus height. Y minus height is minus height. X plus height is just height, and y plus height is just height. The reason why we can get rid of those is because we've moved the OpenGL context to the x and y position, then we do the rotation, then we draw it, and then we rotate it back, and then we move it back. And this happens every time we draw. So when we run the code, nothing seems to have changed, but that's just fine. If we go to the event listener and set this for 1, then we should move over 1 unit to the right, and we do. So everything's still working fine. But why is it not rotating? That's what I'm wondering. Am I using the right value here? Rotate F. Okay, I might have this wrong. I think it's actually supposed to be rotation first, and then the 0, 0, 1. I think I actually had that wrong. Yeah, rotation comes first, as you can see. Now we're getting it rotating. Why is it still rotating? As in, why is it spinning? That's the thing that we're trying to figure out. The reason is because I did not change the negative rotation down here. Copy, paste, enter in rotation to negative rotation. That way, once we've rotated, we won't rotate anymore. Now, if we set this for 45, we should tilt at 45 degrees. See? And if we set this for... Now, see, the thing is, we're tilting the wrong way. Whenever I say... Well, I mean, instinctively, when we do this, we should be rotating around clockwise instead of counterclockwise. So it's a little bit unintuitive. Rather than going back and fixing our viewport or whatever it is that's causing this problem, an easier solution is going to be to just make rotation negative. So rotate negative rotation here and then positive rotation there. This means that 10 degrees is now 10 degrees, is now actually negative 10 degrees, but that gives us clockwise rotation. And so 45 degrees should give us 45 degrees of clockwise rotation, which looks exactly like 45 degrees of counterclockwise rotation. But anyway, that's how we're going to make it where we can rotate our objects. And so we're one step closer to drawing images on the screen. So if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I want to thank you very much for watching. And I will see you in the next video.